Okay, we're on. Right. Hello again. It's been an awfully long while since I last uploaded. The reason for that, or the reasons are myriad. This year has basically been a slow, long punch in the face for me, and it's been pretty brutal. And so I've basically been off this particular horse for some time, and I'm trying to very slowly, very tentatively get back on and make videos that are still very useful to people and still very valuable. Maybe more in the style of those channels that I've been watching a lot lately that I do really appreciate, and I'm trying to sort of populate my whole feed with. I'm forgetting their names now. Something like, oh, Profound Pondering, that guy is wonderful, I love him. Maybe I'm forgetting the titles of their channels. Accepting the Universe, that other fellow with the great hair, he's fantastic too. Those kinds of channels. And there's this lady, this older lady who has a channel as well, that's just fantastic. Anyway, basically the genre of YouTubers that just sort of sit in front of a camera and talk and share the wisdom that they have. I think the world would be a much better place if there were more like that, if more content on the internet were like that. So I make my humble offering in the hope that it offers something of value to some small degree. I think maybe that's a good thing to dilate on, to speak on, the idea of how to relate to life when it sucks and when it's sort of punching you in the face quite consistently. Whether in one great horrible event or in a slow gradual loss that you're experiencing, or threat of loss, or something, as I've sort of felt this year, that causes you to wake up basically every day with some horrendous anxiety. I think I've spent a lot of this year on the threshold between the wisdom that I would like to embody and the, what should I say, rather worldly reality that I actually am, feeling at times like a bit of a fraud because I've failed to live up to the numerous sort of religious and spiritual texts and philosophical texts that I've read and that I've digested and really drunk in. And my proclivity as well, perhaps this is a bad habit, to give advice to other people, as I feel that's the best medium through which I can help other people, is in this particular mode, is in talking about these ideas, in sharing them and allowing other people to internalize them. So all of that together makes me feel a bit strange when I'm suffering, and I don't feel like I'm suffering very well. But I think what I've come to learn, above all, this would be the headline for this small video, for this small ramble, is that the religious life, which is to say the life lived well, the life lived in wisdom, in seeking God, seeking the end of all things, the center, the heart of all things, is twofold, generally speaking. Obviously it's not really this clean in reality, but there is sort of a first half and a second half. And I'm borrowing that language from Richard Rohr, the ever fantastic Richard Rohr, who spells this out quite beautifully in a fairly small book he has. And I've not been exploring this lately through Rohr, I've been exploring it through Taoism. Taoism has been an absolute pillar in my life this year. I've really fallen on it. And my own Christian faith has become much more Taoist, as it were, through the things that I've suffered this year. In either case, Rohr or Taoism, whichever one you go to, or plenty more options, are both keenly aware of the fact that we are, for the first half of life, as it were, however long that is, whether that's literally like until you're 39 and then you're actually at middle age, or it's much sooner, as perhaps it feels like for me. For the first half of life, the name of the game is addition. Adding things to yourself. Taking extrinsic, as it were, sort of nuggets of wisdom and moral convictions and moral principles, and having the people around you, especially when you're a child, give these things to you. You have to be taught as a child in this sort of very finger-wagging sort of decalogue fashion, thou shalt not. You know, you shouldn't steal from people. You shouldn't covet and be envious of other people. You shouldn't be arrogant or prideful. You should give to the poor. You should take care of the needy. You should do this and that, and so on and so forth. Morality, in a word, morality. It's where you're told to do something and you try and do that thing because you believe it's good. The trouble with this is it is not the full story, and modern religion is not very good at telling us that it's not the full story, because we seem to be under the impression, having completely lost so much of the heritage, the mystical heritage, particularly in the Christian West, that was originally safeguarded in the monastic structure of the Middle Ages. Monasteries would be safeguards for that sort of mystical wisdom, which isn't something you could easily share with the masses. But the decline of the monasteries, particularly due to the Reformation, of course, resulted in a loss of Christian mysticism, a loss of the centrality of this second half of life, which is, ironically, the opposite of the first, despite being a natural emergence from it. The first half of life is all about addition, all about adding things to yourself, adding principles, adding habits, adding good things that will make your life and the lives of other people better. The second half of life is about subtraction. I think we all are explicitly and implicitly told, and we all are made to believe, that if we as children want to be successful adults, we have to learn lots of things. We have to get very good at learning these things, and learning the great texts, learning how to make money, how to save money, learning how to make your spouse happy, learning how to make your boss happy, you know, all these different tricks of the trade, how to network or whatever it is, you know, how to keep healthy. All these things are useful, but we don't emphasize enough just how important, dare I even say how more important, the act of forgetting is. And this is why I love Taoism, one of the many reasons. Because you read the Tao Te Ching, read the spiritual exercises, and some of the advice, very pointed advice there, is to let go of things. The moral strictures, being a good person, in the Pauline language, the law, can only take you so far. It can only take you so far. It takes you to the point of being righteous, but then, as Paul and Augustine and Luther all realised, and it sort of developed into not a very pleasant tradition post-Luther, this doesn't save us. You can't be happy just by being a good person. There's something before this, something before all the doctrines and all the dogma. As the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching read, the way that can be named is not the eternal way. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. And the way to get to that Tao, to that way, that essence, the heart of things that we are, is through subtraction. And it's so counterintuitive. That's the beauty of Taoism, and why I believe Taoism bespeaks Christianity, and Christianity bespeaks Taoism. There's a fantastic book, actually, you're sitting on it right now. I was going to pull it out, but I'll move the camera. But it's a book called Christ the Eternal Tao by Hieromonk Damascene, which highlights this very beautifully. Highlights the consonances between Christianity and Taoism, and shows, I think, why everyone, especially Christians, should know about Taoism and know about that tradition. Because it very boldly encourages letting go, forgetting as a virtue, not just acquisition as we in the West always obsess over, always want to acquire, always want to gain. And then when it comes to wisdom, we think this is just another domain in which to gain, in which to make ourselves a better person through the constant self-improvement, constant stretching and straining to move outside of ourselves. But the trouble with straining outside of ourselves, it is not our natural state. We do not feel comfortable like this. If I were to play a sport, if I were to sprint, if I were to do running, short distance running, it would be very rewarding to strain outside of myself in order to practice and then eventually perform and achieve something great. This is fantastic. We're very good at this in the West. At performance, at achievement, at success, and the discipline required to be successful in any particular domain. What we're not good at recognizing is that this is not our natural state. This is something that we do because it's fun, but it's something that should begin from a state of rest, go out into this momentary activity, and then return again to a state of rest. Rest is foundational, not effort, not striving, not work. But when you have a culture that constantly encourages going outside of yourself, even down to the most foundational level, in the sense of you wake up in the morning and the first thing you feel like is, I need something, I need this or that, and that's obviously commodity culture, commodity society. I'm reading a lot of Baudrillard at the moment, and he's very good as an analyst of this. The way in which our desires are now manipulated by the modern market in order to believe that we always need something else, when of course we don't need half the rubbish that is currently in vogue. You know, I mean, I'm not really online at all, so I probably shouldn't comment on some latest craze, but I mean, there was this new stuff about the Starbucks bear cups, is that right? I don't know. I sound like an old man even mentioning it. But that's another good example. Utterly irrelevant. No one would ever want that product. But it's marketed in a certain way that creates the desire. People always naturally are receptive to this kind of marketing because they're always conditioned to need something other than themselves. They always have to stretch outside themselves in order to find some wholeness elsewhere. But, in the words of Ibn Arabi, I was going to get another book, but I've stacked that book on under the camera as well. Ibn Arabi has a beautiful line saying, do not seek yourself outside of yourself, for there is no other. There is nothing other than yourself. To truly grasp yourself as a person is to grasp your unity with all things. And when you grasp that in a very visceral, embodied sense, not as an abstract datum that you've just been told by some clever old man on a hill, but because something you can really feel. You feel your unity, your communion with the plants, with the birds, with the sky and the stars above you, with your fellow human beings, with the air in your lungs and the love in your heart. When you feel all of that, desires start to lose their necessity and they slip away. And then you can start to understand what the Tao Te Ching tells us when it implores us to have as few thoughts and as few desires as possible. Now, few thoughts is tricky because I'm doing a PhD and I'm doing it in philosophy of religion, which means I'm thinking all the time. But what I'm trying to work out with my PhD is how not to think in the way I've been thinking, which is very unhealthily, which is in an obsessive fashion. I mean, Rudyard Kipling obviously says this in his most famous poem. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. Taoism is brilliant because it reminds us that thought comes second. It comes second. Absolutely does not come first. We cannot put the cart before the horse. The way that can be named is not the eternal way. Any doctrine, any dogma, any belief, even if it's true, this is so important, even if it's true, should not precede this ineffable way of living, the essence of all things, the Tao that you should be steeped in, from which those doctrines should only arise secondarily. But in the modern world, we have no point of reference to grasp what that ineffable way is, and so we lose it, and so our discourse devolves. I'm writing about this on Substack at the moment. Our discourse, politically especially, devolves into this horrible shouting match between people, because people are now convinced that there is no higher good beyond their own opinion, and to be a good person is to agree with me on this or that point when it comes to abortion, or it comes to immigration, or some similarly controversial issue. But any view about anything, whether true or false, whether good or evil, is a view. And the Buddha implores us not to cling to views. Do not cling to views, even if they're right. Again, Buddhism obviously knows this whole process of letting go of thinking very well. I mean, the first time I ever encountered this idea was through Buddhism, through study of Buddhism, through the Buddha's analogy of the raft, which I'm sure I've said many times on this channel before, but it's so important, so I'll always say it when I have the chance to say it. A man comes to a river on his journey, and it's a wide river, and he realizes he needs to build a raft in order to get across. So he spends a long time building this raft, putting it all together, weaving together the materials of the forest, and eventually, after some time, he has a sturdy enough vessel to get him across to the other side. Successfully, he does so. And then he comes to continue in his journey and sees that the forest before him is so thick and so bunched together that it is impossible for him to bring his raft with him. He can't balance it on his head and take it with him. And so he realizes there is only one thing for it. If he wishes to continue his journey, to make that traversal worthwhile, he must put the raft back in the river and let it float on by. The first half of life is addition. The second half of life is subtraction. We are formed in the right way, the good right way, and then we let go of it. It's like learning to ride a bike, learning to swim. What do you do when you learn to ride a bike? You have stabilizers, you have your dad holding on to you. But then when you get to a certain point, these things become a hindrance. You still have stabilizers on your bike when you're 18. You can't ride a bike, you haven't actually achieved what you meant to set out for in the first place. You need to take the stabilizers off. But because of the formation they've given you, they'll send you in the right direction. They've given you the foundation. But the whole point is, it all needs to be, there needs to be a point of transition. There needs to be a point of transition where you can go from one to the other. Same with swimming. You need armbands, you need a float, you need everything that you need to practice. And then at some point you need to take them off. You need to remove what has got you this far. Because what is once a help now becomes a hindrance. So, what does that then mean for suffering? It means that we suffer very much in our minds because we hold on to things, because we don't know how to forget, how to let go. I think, this has been my big problem this year, my big flaw. I think that whenever I'm suffering, what needs to happen is I need to add something to myself. I need to add something from a particular repertoire of wisdom. I'll go into one of these religious texts and I'll read it and I'll search for something. That's not the problem. I could find something that's very useful, but it would only be a temporary measure. It would be a superficial attempt to address a deep wound. What's actually the problem is the structure itself, the actual process of going outside myself. Now, it's better for me to go outside myself in order to read the Bhagavad Gita than it is for me to go outside of myself to get absolutely blazed and smashed so I never have to feel any negative emotions, right? There are better and worse ways to go outside yourself. This is true. But going outside yourself itself is ultimately the problem. Seeking wholeness in something other than what you are, not going within. And going within can also be mistaken for an addition. If you're seeking for something other than yourself in yourself, then it's just irrelevant. If you're seeking a certain state, if you're seeking peace, well, if peace isn't here, if I'm feeling anxious, I can't spend my time thinking about, oh, why am I not peaceful? You're not peaceful. It's not where you are right now. It's okay. You don't have to fix that. Why do you feel you need to fix that? That's the question. Why do you feel you have to fix that? Where's that obligation coming from? That's interesting. That's much more interesting. And that's the kind of thread you can start to pull on and find a sense of peace after you've let go of trying to be peaceful. Because you realize that there's this obligation animating you, this fight or flight, which pushes you toward needing something when this is not true. This is just a lie. This is a false belief that you need something outside yourself. And it's exhausting you. It's exhausting you. And I promise you that true rest is in giving up. You don't need to cling to these things anymore. So that's what I'm practicing at the moment, forgetting things. I'm normally quite a forgetful person anyway, so anyone who knows me and sees this will laugh because I forget far too much. My head's in the clouds a bit. But I'm practicing forgetting things. I'm practicing forgetting old habits that no longer serve me. I'm practicing forgetting overthinking. Because if I get into a cycle of overthinking, there's no reason it won't stop, because the logic of overthinking is self-justifying. The only way out of that is to just forget about it altogether. Let it go. Letting go is different from contradicting something. It's not like I suddenly have a good reason to stop overthinking, because if I have a reason, then I'm thinking, and that will feed into the same cycle of overthinking. I'll be playing the devil's game. Letting go always means leaving things unfinished. In Japanese culture, I forget the term, this is quite a common motif, deliberately leaving things unfinished. So you're no longer animated and obsessed with the idea of controlling things that are extrinsic to you, because you can't, and it brings you suffering if you think you should. Surrender, openness, humility. These are the virtues of the holy life, the religious life. And from these spring gratitude, peace, joy, love. It is a narrow way at first. Trust me, I know it. I'm working my way down this particular path, and it's not very fun sometimes. But it is the good, right old way, as Nicholas Ferrar says. Keep in it. And let go. Let go.